I don't think anyone was expecting the transfer portal to be especially kind to Iowa State football, but it's gotten really ugly. And unfortunately, I don't think it's getting better anytime soon.
You are Locked On Cyclones, your daily podcast on the Iowa State Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, now the #1 sports podcast network. I'm your host, Nick Marovets. Thank you for making this your first watch or listen of the day. I appreciate it more than you know. Be sure to hit subscribe down below so we can prove once and for all that it is, in fact, a Cyclone state. Today's show is revolving entirely around the transfer portal. Tons of news, some big names that have announced that they are intending to enter the transfer portal in just the last few hours. So I'm going to name them, kind of give my initial reaction, and then we're also going to go back over the entire list, a little bit of a refresher, if you will, in this first segment. Then in segment 2, I went through and kind of did a strength grade for each position group on Iowa State's roster, like as a football team. How is the QB position doing versus the running back position? Trust me, we're not quite as healthy as I would have liked to be at this point, kind of in this whole shift from Matt Campbell to Jimmy Rogers. And then finally, in the third segment, we're going to take a look into the future. All right. We will go over where we're at now, but what does the future look like for Iowa State football kind of between now and really next season before spring ball, as Jimmy Rogers attempts to salvage this team through the transfer portal himself. We'll go through that in the final segment. But first, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. I hate to do this. I really, 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 really do. I'm not joking when I say that I really don't want to have to talk about this stuff. And on some level, I didn't think I was going to have to. A few of these names that I'm about to mention that are intending to go into the portal, I really did not think Iowa State was going to see this name jump into the portal. I'm going to be completely candid with you. I have a list of 4 names that are new from the last time that I talked about the portal that I am not exactly thrilled to report are jumping into the portal. Number 1, Carson Hansen has announced that he will be transferring from Iowa State. I'm just going to get through all 4 of them. Xavier Townsend has also announced that he will be transferring. Brett Eskilson will be hitting the portal. Dalen Hazard, offensive lineman, will be hitting the portal. Those 4 guys, I'm not going to lie to you, that could be the strongest, the most impactful group of 4 guys, maybe outside of any 3 guys paired up with Rocco, that Iowa State is seeing transfer. And they all kind of happened within about a few hours of each other. This is not a good feeling. I'm not going to lie to you. I believe I saw Brett Eskilson's announcement first. And in some ways, I knew that this was kind of definitely a domino. This was a big one to fall. Rocco Becht, we talked about how important that one is. And I did wonder if Rocco and Brett Eskilson would be kind of paired up with each other just because of how good Brett was this season. But Brett going down on the offensive side of the ball, just looking at from the fan perspective, who will be on the team next season, like that's not a name you want to see leaving Iowa State football. And then Xavier Townsend, another wide receiver. I believe his announcement was second, if I am correct in my timeline here. And that one, obviously, I think that the potential just wasn't quite reached with Xavier Townsend. Not a name that we saw a lot this season, but certainly a name that I think has a ton of potential, just a ridiculous amount of potential. And I'll be very curious to see what he does in the future. Genuinely, I think that guy, between injury, scheme, defense is trying to, eliminate him from kind of the game plan. He wasn't really what I think what we all thought he could be. And so I am actually very curious to see what he does down the road. Carson Hansen, look, this is a name that I was pretty confident would return to Iowa State. We talked about this a little bit, but now with role as the offensive coordinator, having been the running back coach for Carson Hansen in the past, I genuinely thought that, especially with the fact that Jimmy Rogers is a very, we're going to run the ball head coach, I really thought Hansen was going to stick around. I legitimately, I won't say that I kind of wrote it off like a foregone conclusion, but I was not, there were a list of names that I kind of am looking at here, and I still have that list, and Hansen wasn't on there. Like, I knew it was a possibility, but it was not something that I was actively scared of, right? Scared is maybe a strong word, but that one shocked me, I have to say. And I think that will be a massive hit for Iowa State this next season. And I'll talk more about kind of the running back position and where they're at in the second segment, but that is a big blow. And I don't need to read you the stats. You know how important Hansen was to this team. This was a major, major loss. Obviously, Townsend and Eskilson as well. But this Hansen, I think this was the biggest one besides, honestly, Rocco up until this point. You could make the argument that Cooper and John Tiz Williams were in that conversation as well. We'll get to that full list in a second. But in recent memory, Hansen, number one. This one was a shock. And Dalen Hazard at the offensive line. Look, the biggest thing with this name for me is it's going to come up in the second segment. So you're going to have to stick around to see kind of where we're at there. The total list here, I've kind of got the important names pulled up. Rocco Becht, quarterback, huge loss, or I guess, entering the transfer portal. Technically, let me throw this out here. These guys haven't actually signed to another school, so I am going to stay just slightly delusional and hope that they could re-sign with Iowa State. I know that that's a very low probability. I completely understand that, but like technically speaking, they haven't signed with another school yet. So I'm going to keep my my hopes up here. Let's just say these are the names of the guys who have announced they are intending to enter the portal, right? Because technically the portal doesn't even open until the 2nd. So none of these guys are actively in the portal right now, to my understanding at least. Rocco Becht, quarterback, that's a major one. Obviously, don't have to lay that one out for you. But there is a little bit of a twist with that. Be sure to stick around for the second segment there. Cam Smith, Quentin Taylor Jr., Josh Patterson, Jeremiah Cooper, John Tez Williams, Kaijon Cummings-Coleman, and then the four names I just mentioned: Dalen Hazard, Eskilson, Townsend, Hansen. The list is growing quite long of players that are intending to enter the transfer portal for Iowa State, or from this last season for Iowa State. It's getting quite ugly. I have to be honest. Like I said, it's not looking great right now. And I think what I'm kind of feeding into a little bit is the aspect that this is going to get worse before it gets better. There are going to be names that, like I've said this 1,000 times, there were names that were going to enter the portal no matter what, win, lose, draw. There were guys that were ready to move on. And then, the whole situation that we've been through just only exacerbated that situation. So, just kind of have to trust the process here. Trust Jimmy Rogers. This list is not the final list. It's going to get longer. I believe the portal closes the 16th. So, it officially opens the 2nd. We'll get some more intending to enter the portal between now and then. And then we'll get probably a flood on the 2nd, and it won't technically be over until the 16th when the portal closes. Now, that being said, I brought this up yesterday. A few guys have announced that they are intending to come back. I love that. Can we maybe do more of that so I'm not sitting on the edge of my seat here wondering what's going to happen? I've seen some schools do re-signing day photo shoots. If you know anybody in the building and you're kind of like wondering, what can we do? Maybe we make this a whole media day, a fun photo shoot type of situation. They get a re-sign, they get a whole new thing that they can put up on their social media for these players. Let's make it a whole event. Let's really celebrate these guys coming back. I know it sounds ridiculous, but on some level, like, we kind of got to do what we got to do here, right? But I did appreciate the few guys that announced they are going to be returning to Iowa State this next season. And one of the names that I did not mention yesterday, Jack Bjorn, will be coming back as well. I think the list will be growing. I'm excited to see a very, very long list of players that will be coming back to Iowa State. And obviously our main focus right now is kind of on the guys leaving. But in the back of our, mind, and the I was going to say the back of the folder for some reason. I'm not sure why my mind went back to 6th grade science class, but nonetheless, we are still thinking about those guys who are going to be on the roster next season. And I agree entirely with the discourse online that once you announce you're coming back to Iowa State, you've kind of already, you've kind of hit that legend status, right? Like, you've kind of shown that you are true to the university, to the team, to what Iowa State is about. And that is more than just something. Like, that's a big deal. And I think all of the fans appreciate that, myself included, for sure. I might have a microphone in front of me, but I'm truly just a huge fan of the Cyclones. So as a fan, that is great. I really do love to see that. A couple guys coming out, hey, we're coming back next season. Don't worry. I like that, so I don't have to be so worried. I'm not so anxious all the time. If you know somebody who's intending to come back, like, I know they might lose a little bit of leverage, but boy, do the fans certainly appreciate that. I am not joking. That being said, I'm actually kind of excited to debut these. I went through and did the grades for each position group. How strong is each position looking now? And are they trending up, down, or right about the same? We're going to go over all of that coming up right here after this. But first, a word from our friends over at FanDuel. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift. A receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into the moment, especially now as we're getting to the end of the season, and the tensions are starting to rise. The stakes are certainly higher than they were just a few weeks ago as live spreads and money lines adjust instantly. Player props updating as guys heat up. You can bet next touchdown scorers, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, and every possibility. So, if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. So Iowa State has seen a ton of transfers. Honestly, I was going to say way too many transfers, although I do understand where these guys are coming from. And because the list is so long, I decided to go through and grade basically the strength of every position group on Iowa State's roster. Here at Locked On Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And honestly, when I went through and graded these, I felt a little better than I thought I would. Okay. And I'll give my reasoning for a lot of these grades. We're just kind of going to work our way slowly through this piece by piece. And the biggest one being quarterback. Rocco Becht announcing his departure from Iowa State. Not ideal. Like that's a name that I would have loved to see come back this next season. I think the development was there. We were headed on the right trajectory, especially when you consider the fact that he was playing this entire last season with an injury. That a torn labrum, and even if it's in your non-throwing shoulder, it's going to hurt. That's going to be a major, I don't want to say the word that came to mind is deterrent, but it's going to impact your game, right? It's going to certainly affect decisions you make, throws you're capable of making, plays you're capable of making. I think there was a lot of potential on the table for Rocco Becht to come back significantly stronger next season. Just not going to get that opportunity. I ended up giving quarterback a C grade right now. The reason for that is Rocco was not the guy for the next 3 years. Rocco's the guy for next year. And Connor Moberly announced he's going to be coming back. I do wonder, we haven't really talked about this name, but JJ Cole is back in the transfer portal. Maybe he comes back from App State. I don't know where he's going to go, but obviously an Iowa kid, as I just talked about yesterday with a few of the guys who announced they were coming back to Iowa State. I believe Ankeny. I want to say Ankeny. It's either Ankeny or Altoona, and I honestly get those two mixed up. So I'm grading the quarterback room at a C because it's going to take a big hit, but it had to take a hit at some point, right? Whether it was next year and the guys behind Rocco were slightly older, or if it's right now, it was coming. It was coming very soon, actually. So, yeah, losing Rocco hurts. But now that this is like a potential reality and I was able to take a look at it, it's not the end of the world. It's not good. It's not great. Okay, let's just call it how it is. But it's not the end of the world. We aren't left with nobody on our roster. We still have some dudes in there as of right now, as of time of recording. At running back, I went ahead and gave running back a B-. Interesting grade there, I know. That basically what I'm saying is that Carson Hansen didn't have as big of an impact as Rocco Becht, and I completely understand that, right? Like a B- versus a C grade. But the running back room, we've seen production from Sama, obviously, at the number 2. Dylan Lee has been in, and Flora, I think, has really impressed in the punt return game. And we could see even more from him as a running back. We saw glimpses towards the end of the season, especially that's the reason I gave it a higher grade. Was there's just more production right behind, right there. I'm not saying that behind Rocco there's nothing. We just haven't really seen it. We've seen kind of what Sama and Lee and Flora are capable of doing. Those could really, they're not going to fill the gap, but they aren't going to allow a complete cave in at the running back position. And then we'll probably grab a few guys in the portal as well. So I think that that's a B minus, trending slightly up. I still think we have a really good chance of retaining a lot of talent with Roll as the OC. And we'll get into that more in the third segment, but trending slightly up there. Tight end, an A right now. That's what I'm grading it. We haven't seen anybody, to my knowledge, at the tight end position enter the portal. And I do think this role hire was genuinely huge for Iowa State. This was a massive, massive hire because for the tight ends especially, he coached at the NFL level. Just this last season for the Detroit Lions, Coach Roll is able to, directly convey information to obviously Bramer and Burkle, but even Cooper Alexander, a name that I was extremely excited about for this season, to, say, hey, this is like what we expect from you right now, but also like this is what the big leagues are like. Like this is what it's genuinely like in the NFL. Not only was he a coach at the NFL level or an OC or something where he had, familiarity with the tight ends, he was working directly with them. That was kind of his job. So that's that's an A, right? I feel very good about the tight ends. No names in yet. Obviously it's not over, but no names in right now. And we have a really solid coach as an OC with experience with the tight ends. I feel really good about that. Offensive lineman, I went B plus for now because not a ton of names in the portal at this moment. But I do think, obviously, Clanton heading over to Penn State, Campbell as well, and then also the OC, the guy who's calling the plays, Taylor Mauser leaving. It's going to be a whole new shift for these offensive linemen. And Hazard entering the portal doesn't make me feel super confident about the offensive linemen. Now, keep in mind, the way that Jimmy Rogers has talked about this offense, I do feel okay with the fact that he wants to run it through the offensive line, win games in the trenches, pound the rock. Like, those are words I think offensive linemen want to hear. And I think that gets them fired up, and they'd be willing to play for that. But Hazard entering was kind of the first potential indicator for me. We'll see. Potentially he's the only one, and maybe he was one of those guys who was going to announce regardless of how the season ended or whether or not Matt Campbell left. But right now, my kind of initial, my red flags are up at the offensive line position. So I gave it a B plus, like really still a solid grade. If we only lose Hazard, I think that's a decent portal kind of season for us at the offensive lineman position, but I have it slightly trending down. I'm just nervous, I think, is how I would mostly describe the offensive lineman, position. And then at wide receiver, I went C minus here. You could probably argue even slightly lower. No Townsend next season, no Eskilson are going to hurt. Eskilson was one of those names that I really wanted to see return for Iowa State. And Townsend, like I said, I think he just had such untapped potential. I think there was so much there. And that one really hurts. Not so much because we saw the production, but I felt like there was just a lot of, like I said, potential. Like we didn't really utilize him a whole lot. I thought he was a weapon that was just kind of sitting off to the side. So C minus, and I do think trending down. And that's not necessarily anything against any of these guys. It's just when you lose your number one quarterback, you have to understand as a wide receiver, that is the guy who's keeping you employed, right? You can't throw yourself the ball. You can't put the ball in the right spot. You can't choose to throw it to yourself, like as opposed to throwing to anyone else on the field. That doesn't make it makes sense to me, right? That's a tough pill to swallow, but the wide receivers clearing out after the quarterback enters the portal that's a business decision. And to be completely honest, that's kind of what we're looking at here. Is just a ton of business decisions. It's what college football has become, and we have to accept that. And I did put trending down next to wide receiver as well. Not only do you lose your quarterback, but you also lose top-tier talent at the wide receiver position as well. And my final point here for this segment, then we'll switch over to the defensive side, is that at that wide receiver position, losing top-tier talent is both good and bad at the exact same time. Simultaneously great and extremely negative if you're still on the roster. So I'll be curious to see what happens because obviously losing top-tier talent means you move up in the depth chart, right? You move up in the number of snaps you're getting on the field, number of targets you're getting. I understand that. But also look at Higgins and Knoll, right? That's I mean, in the most recent memory for Iowa State, the perfect combo. When you have a Higgins on the field, it pulls attention from Noel. And when you have a Noel on the field, it pulls attention from Higgins. And there's a symbiotic relationship there where they can help each other thrive in the system. If you are some stud wide receiver and you're buried in the depth chart, say you're at 8 in the depth chart for some reason. We don't need to get into whatever the reason might be, but if those 7 guys in front of you who are all studs transfer out, and you're looking at this like, yeah, this is a positive thing for you. You're now at the top of the depth chart, but you have nobody around you. You know, maybe they don't even have another wide receiver on the depth chart, right? Like they're bringing up high schoolers to play for you, alongside with you. The defense can literally just take away one wide receiver. They can focus it entirely on you, and that is going to be a very tough challenge to overtake. So that's why I put trending down at wide receiver. You lost your quarterback, which already indicates to me a trending down situation. And then on top of that, you don't, like, as Townsend and Eskilson leave, I don't feel great about those guys. And I just know, like as a former wide receiver and how the game works, like it's not ideal for that position. That is a very tough position for Iowa State right now. I will grade it a C- because we've technically only lost 2 wide receivers, but yeah, it's I think that position is probably the steepest downhill indicator for over the next few weeks. We're going to go ahead and dive into the defensive side of the ball, and I've also got some future predictions, but all that's coming up right here after this. Coming back, we did the offensive side of the strength grades. Overall, relatively solid here at Locked On Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. An A at the tight end and a relatively high grade at running back. I was honestly kind of shocked myself. And aside from offensive lineman and wide receiver, most position groups are trending either neutral or up, I would say. And they're basically all neutral, to be completely honest. But lineman and wide receiver, I think, are trending slightly down or very much down, and that's not ideal. But across the board, offensively, I feel pretty good about Iowa State right now. And on the defensive side of the ball, I was actually shocked about how good I do feel about those position groups. And I'm going to tell you about them here in a second. But first, I want to let you know about the Everydayer Club. Thank you for making Locked On Cyclones your first listen of the day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. If you haven't already, just go check out the new Everydayer Club. Take a few minutes, read what it's about. Access to an ad-free, audio feed for Locked On Cyclones, compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And an invite to the members-only Locked On Everydayer Club Discord server, which includes a group chat for listeners of this show. I mean, it's a really cool thing we're doing. Go ahead and I've got the link here, lockedoncyclones.supercast.com. It's in the show notes below. Just go kind of learn more about it. I think this is a really cool opportunity as we kind of round out the year here, jumping into the portal season and all that. Just want to make you guys aware. All right, let's get to the defensive side of the ball here. 3, I wrote down defensive lineman, linebacker, and DB was how I did it. I didn't separate, nose from edge and outside, inside linebacker, Mike Will Sam, quarterback, safety, strong safety, free safety. I just went 3 basic grades here. Defensive lineman, no, to my knowledge, defensive lineman I'm reviewing, but no defensive lineman in the portal. That's an A. This isn't, and to be completely honest, like this isn't really a grade of where Iowa State is at as far as like, roster strength. It's more about like portal, kind of how much has been lost to the portal and where is the strength of the group with the coaching staff and what does the future look like. So yeah, I know we're going to lose a few guys to graduation. And I don't know how many guys we're going to bring in the portal, but as of right now, I have the defensive line as an A. No guys in the portal yet. And a very defensive minded head coach. And Jesse Bobbitt coming over. Like, I feel pretty good about the defensive line. So I gave it an A. That might be too high for some of you. Let me know if that's the case down below, but I feel all right. Linebacker, I also went A. And I also gave them, defensive line and linebacker are trending straight across because where do you go from A? A plus, I guess. And I just didn't consider that. But the reason I did that is there is so much potential to be developed by Jimmy Rogers. And I don't know exactly who the linebacker coach is off the top of my head right now, but with Bobbitt as well. This really could be an opportunity for those guys to stick around and to learn a lot and to develop as players and to work inside of a system that benefits them as far as their career. So both defensive line and linebacker getting a, kind of neutral trend right now. I feel good about those guys. Defensive back, I went D-, and I was going to give it an F, but technically not. I guess not everybody's in the portal, so I couldn't go that low, but I did put trending down. Same kind of thing as the wide receiver position. I'm not going to break it all down in the same detail, but defensive backs, the whole defensive unit works together as a team. And we know this. Like, the secondary can only guard players for so long. And the better your secondary is, obviously, the more time your line has to get to the quarterback. But the slower your quarterback or your defensive line is at getting to the quarterback, the longer your secondary has to cover. So even from the two position groups that are like theoretically the furthest apart from each other, there is a symbiotic relationship. Like, they have to work together there. But even in the defensive, like, obviously, of course, in the defensive back room, your left corner is just important as your right corner, and together they create the ability to stop the pass, right? You could be the top best corner in the entire world, but if across the field from you is some guy who has never played corner before, it's like, that's just a problem. It's going to be really tough to play through. So as top talent leaves the defensive back room, you're just going to see guys that are going to follow suit. I have it trending down. Huge names. I mean, Cooper and Williams, we've talked about how good they were supposed to be before last season. Patterson, Quentin Taylor, Kaijon Cummings-Coleman, like names that all stepped up big time for Iowa State this season. We will not be having the same conversations we had last season as far as the linebackers. It's just the fact of the matter. Last year was super exciting because we had a bunch of young guys step in, and then we were going to have the big names, like Bacon, come back this year. The big names just aren't coming back. That is very, very unfortunate. And even honestly, the depth is not coming back either for Iowa State for next season. That being said, what does next season look like? I think it's actually the perfect segue. I got a few minutes here, and I just want to talk a little bit about where the future is. I wrote on here, is Iowa State doomed? Well, what is their chance of retaining talent now? How much talent can we feasibly bring in? What does the offense versus the defense look like? How much do coaches matter in this situation? The outlook, to stick with the trending up, trending down, trending pretty much straight across. I am going to give Iowa State a trending straight across right now. You can kind of tread water a little bit here. You're losing a ton of talent. You just flat out you are. And I think that Jimmy Rogers knew that was going to be the case. But he's going to have guys he's going to bring in. And you're going to bring in guys from across the country. It's not over yet. You still have a chance. And I think that this is a really solid young coach that can bring in some really good talent. He's obviously done recruiting across the country as being a head coach at, SDSU, South Dakota State, and then Washington State. Like, he's not some guy who's done no recruiting at all. He's familiar with 2026 guys, but also having been a head coach for a while, a couple of guys that if they jump in the portal, they may have a relationship with Rogers. I'm going to put it trending across. I'm not quite confident enough to say that it's going to get better or significantly better, enough to say trending up. But I also don't think they're trending down. So I feel really good about that specific piece, at least. Retaining talent, that was kind of what I just went through as far as the arrows, right? Are we trending up, trending down in positions, trending straight across? At quarterback, I think we're okay at retaining the talent there. I don't think that we're at super high risk of losing a ton of other quarterbacks. If we lose one or two, I think we actually might only have 3 on the roster, so I shouldn't say that. But I think that there is going to be a quarterback competition. There's incentive to want to come back to Iowa State there. Running back, I feel really good about retaining talent there. Tight end, I feel really good about that. And all the defensive positions, especially the line and linebackers, I feel good about retaining talent there simply because of the coaches. As that was my final question on here. I think Jimmy Rogers did a really good job of targeting a few guys that were explicitly, I feel brought in to retain talent on some level. Obviously, they're great coaches, but Roll coming in as an OC is massive. That is absolutely huge for the tight end and running back room. And having had experience at Iowa State as well. And then Bobbitt and Rogers already having been a defensive-minded head coach, that just really kind of secures up the defensive side of the ball for me. I feel pretty good about that. And then how much talent can we feasibly bring in? This was kind of answered already in the Iowa State doomed question, but I do think that there is going to be a decent amount brought in. I don't think you're going to see Iowa State as this like we've talked about the money side of things and Pollard and what he said. It's just not really there monetarily, but culture wise, I think that somehow to me, the culture remained intact. I'm not going to say that it's perfect because it's not the same coach. And also, the coach coming in did just leave his last coaching job after 1 year. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you that, you've got a lot of stability. You know what the culture is exactly. But I think it's really close to what it's been. About as close as you're going to get when you lose a Matt Campbell, to be completely honest. Not just any coach, but a Matt Campbell. I do feel all right. What is our, how much talent can we feasibly bring in? I think, let me put it this way. I think Rodgers will bring in the amount of talent that he needs to bring in. I don't think he's going to end up significantly shy of the amount of talent that he needs. Will it maybe be like displaced kind of odd and a couple position groups might be thin and a couple other position groups like a little bit stronger? Maybe that will be the case. There is a chance. And maybe a lot of them are younger guys and we lack some veteran leadership or whatever the case is. I think that Jimmy Rodgers at the end of the day will bring in the amount of talent that he needs. So I think that's a good thing. I think we're generally trending in the right direction, even if it isn't super positive. Let me know what you guys think. This is a ton of names being thrown at you. Just a lot going on in Iowa State football right now. So let me know in the comments below kind of how you're feeling generally, I think is the best way to go about this. In the comments below, we're at Nick_Marv. Do you think Iowa State is doomed, or do you think Jimmy Rodgers has a chance at fixing the roster during this portal period that we are rapidly approaching? I mean, it's coming up very, very quickly. So that being said, I do appreciate every single one of you guys for listening till this point in the episode. If you haven't already, subscribe below. It's completely free. It helps us prove that it is, in fact, a Cyclone state. That being said, until next time, Cyclone fans, sayonara.